Welcome to Office Hours. Today is March 3rd, and we're here to talk about SEO and all kinds of things like that. But the first thing we're going to do is revisit our SEO experiment from last week. So I'm going to share my screen so we can kind of explain what we've done. So last week, we were investigating this idea, this old school SEO rumor that you can submit a website to Google. So there are charlatan email SEO people out there who send you emails to say, hey, you pay me a fee, I'll submit your site to Google, which is baloney. However, within Google Search Console, there's a way to submit a page to Google. And so what we wanted to find out is if we submit a page to Google without changing it, does it do anything? So we each, the assignment, the homework was to go into Search Console and find a page that Google has not indexed for some reason that we wish Google were to index, and hit the request indexing button. And then along with that, we were going to go into Search Console every day real quickly and just check to see if the URL we submitted has yet been accepted by Google. So I picked this URL, curiousants.com/gameplan. And last Wednesday, a week ago, I submitted this. I hit the request indexing button that my mouse is hovering over right now. And as you can see, this URL is not in Google yet. Even though I submit, you all saw me submit it. Mm-hmm. So I am curious, did anybody submit a URL to Google?
I did.
And what did you find? What did you see?
Same thing as you. I've checked it. I actually put it on my calendar to check every morning because I thought I would forget. I knew I would forget. And I've checked every morning since I did it Wednesday afternoon. And same thing as you, URL is not on Google.
Okay.
So
anybody else?
Blog post.
Allie, Lavanya, did you do it?
I did not, because if you remember, we checked this last week and our website is so well mapped that there were no pages to submit.
You're doing such good SEO that Google just loves everything you've done.
Mm-hmm.
How about you, Lavanya?
Either. I think we kind of did mine the week before.
Okay.
When I got the that error message.
Yeah. Okay. So anecdotally, it looks like that submitting to Google didn't really do anything.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I would love to see us repeat this some other time. But so I don't know if we have enough data to say definitively, scientifically, definitively, Google ignores this. But the fact is,
doesn't it just take some time?
Well, it says, so I found, let me find this. I was doing a little research and I found this article in Google about this tool.
Mm-hmm.
And oh, I'm not finding it here. I thought, okay, I maybe it's not on this page, but I thought it said that it would take 1 or 2 days. Now, the problem with this experiment is that we didn't change the page at all, right? So we found this by going into coverage, excluded pages, and then either crawled currently not indexed, meaning Google's found the page but decided not to add it to its index for some reason, or discovered currently not indexed. So the difference being Google discovered means Google knows it exists, but it's not indexing it. Crawled means Google's spider has actually looked at the page and decided not to index it. So for whatever reason, Google decided not to index it. Submitting it does not alone make Google put it in the index. So for instance, mine, if you recall, was crawled, currently not indexed. So that means Google knows the page exists, but decided not to add it to the index. So that would mean maybe it's the content's not valuable enough, not unique enough. Maybe it's thin. Maybe it's a copied page somewhere else. Maybe just there's no value to the page at all. But whatever reason, Google knows it exists. It's just saying, I don't want to serve this page in the search results.
One thing that's interesting is that the one that I submitted
Mhm.
was a blog post, and it was talking about Google's, like, it was old from like 2017.
Okay.
And it was like basically talking about mobile friendly and mobile responsive websites for Google. and also that's interesting. Google didn't like it.
So I think at this point we can say, clearly we need to look at why Google doesn't like our pages. So if we look at the page I submitted, which I later regretted, because now I realize, oh yeah, I totally know why Google doesn't want to add this page to the index. I thought this was a different page. Really, this is a blog category page.
Okay.
Right? So there's nothing really, I added one little sentence here. There's a lot of things you need to do to have a successful SEO campaign. What should you do first? This is, okay. So that 1 or 2 sentences is not a unique enough content on this page, because the rest of these little fragments are the previews of the blog posts, right? So this is not, I agree with Google. This isn't necessarily worth showing in the search results, right? So Tricia, do you want to share
Okay. So
your?
yeah, I will. But y'all, so first off, I'm going to preface.
That's all right. We're all friends here.
Ancient website. This was written in 2017. Okay, so do you want me to do a screen share, or what do you want me to do?
Yeah, that'd be great if you can.
Okay. Share. Okay, can you see it?
All right. Yes.
Okay, so this was just one of my blog posts. Is your website mobile friendly? And I just I had a YouTube video that's embedded.
Sure.
Then I went down and talked about different things and user experience and pictures and structure and blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, there's a fair amount of content there.
Yeah.
Is it unique to your knowledge?
Yeah, well, I mean, I wrote it. I typically what I was doing then was I was actually making notes, recording a video, which is the YouTube embedded at the top. And from there, I would then take the video and kind of write it and put it in with, headings and blah, shorter set paragraphs.
Okay.
So yeah.
So,
after a week, Google still hasn't,
Well, after longer than that, right? Because you found it in Search Console. Google's known it's existed for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, it's existed since August of 8th of 2017.
There you go.
And so yeah.
Okay, so let's all put our heads together and see if we can figure out why we think Google's not indexing this. Of course, we're not blaming Tricia for this. We're not saying Tricia is somehow incompetent. Like, no, that's not what we're doing here. We're trying to understand Google, right?
Uh-huh.
So the first thing I would check is I would go to the site copyscape.com. And click on, the cat has decided that it's going to, now grab your URL and put it in there.
Sorry, y'all. I'm using someone's laptop, so I'm not as
No, that's fine. You're doing
easy
it.
to use with it. Okay. So now
Okay.
no results.
So that means that as far as Copyscape is considered, it's unique content.
Okay. So is that, so I sometimes will use Grammarly. Is Copyscape?
Yeah. It's Grammarly will allow you to do the same thing. This is just a plagiarism checking tool.
Yeah. Well, and I've noticed, so like on Grammarly, it's like there are certain ways that you say things, and it's like this little part matches some other website that is completely an unrelated business, but it's like talking about we've been in business for 25 years and it's like, well, that if that's how long you've been in business, that's a standard type thing. So why are you
Right.
picking up plagiarism check on that?
Well, I think it's more of an alert, not a warning.
Yeah, and that's
Right.
kind of what I just ignored it. I'm
And,
like,
and by going here, I'm not accusing you of plagiarism, but what
No,
I am
but you wanna make sure
doing
that
is making sure no one
Google's-
else has plagiarized you.
well, yes, because I know that can happen. And because
Right.
if that happens, then Google doesn't know who the original is, and I have to tell them that I'm the original.
Right. So number one, we know that the content is unique. The content seems pretty long. It's a WordPress website, so Google has easily found it. You know, one thought I had, and that's why I wanted to go to Copyscape, is because sometimes when we talk about a topic like mobile friendliness,
Mhm.
there's only so many ways to say the same thing.
Yeah.
And so even if we don't copy someone's content directly, we very easily could have said kind of the same things
Yeah.
and nothing new.
Yeah.
And so in that sense, I think this shows that, hey, this is unique content. You know, it seems long enough. Let's go back to your page and see.
Oh shoot. I have I don't have it on this computer, but there's a neat Chrome extension where you can count the words on a web page.
Yeah.
I would have used that, but I don't have it installed on this one.
Well, you know, I just suggest that. So Google has recently come out with some statements about reminding us that Google does not count the words as a ranking factor.
Mhm.
But longer pages, longer posts always perform better. And it's not because Google is saying, oh, you only have 799 words, I'm not going to show your page in the search results. It's simply because with so many words, number one, it's a lot easier to write unique content if you're writing a lot of it.
Mhm.
Number two, the potential search phrases that could land on a long page are more. If you do 300 words, you're limiting how many things that page could be served up from in the search results. But if you do 800, there's a lot of things that Google could send that page in response to, right? So I'd say this page, I'd estimate, you know, easily 500 to 800 words.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. And I think it's it's to me, it was weird that then even after I submitted it, Google still hasn't picked it up.
Yeah.
So
Anybody else have a suggestion or something we want to check to see why Google maybe doesn't like this page?
I mean, I was looking at my list of stuff. I
Yeah.
don't seem to have the only one it chose discovered currently not indexed was the locations file, which remember you guys helped me delete Trish helped me delete my address. I guess it decided to remove that KML file then. And then that's the only thing I had. And then the others were crawled currently not indexed, were like tagged or like tag pages or feeds.
Right.
Yeah.
And we don't want Google to index the feed, right? We want them to go to the content. So means
that's weird that yours was like an actual. You
Okay.
guys both had actual pages, like that was a post, or yours was a blog page, blog category page, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, this is a blog post when I was doing them weekly back then.
That is
Hey,
weird.
David,
Yeah.
I just found something. I just realized Google, I changed my website, so I just found there was no, I went back to the URL inspection
Yeah.
and put in one of my pages and it's not indexed.
Okay.
So, you clicked on request indexing.
Yep.
Okay.
I'll stop sharing my
I
page.
thought it would pick it up itself, but I guess not.
Well, so it takes Google time, and this theoretically is there to help expedite it. But what we're finding is it doesn't expedite it very fast, because I'm looking at Trisha's page and I'm saying, hey, what I don't, maybe let's just say maybe there's a whole lot of pages on the same topic, and this page maybe doesn't rank in the top 100 of them. And that's no insult. That's just reality, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Right? I hope you're not insulted. I'm just suggesting. So if that's the case, you'd still think Google would add it to the index.
Still index it, yeah.
And so does that mean if there are 100,000 pages on mobile friendly websites and yours doesn't make the certain cut, that Google is now just going to just not even bother to index it? That's an interesting thought.
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Uh,
So the other thing I might think of, yeah, go ahead.
I'll say, because I mean, and I don't know if it has anything to do. So that's my old site that I'm working on launching my new one. And I'm not like going in and keeping things up to date. I'm like, it's secure, but that's about the extent of it. So I don't know if there's anything else that Google thinks I should be doing and I haven't done. So that's why, but I don't know. And I don't know how long it hasn't been indexed.
Right.
I don't know so is that something like it could have been indexed and then they dropped it off?
Well, so that's an interesting question. Google loves fresh new content.
Yeah.
And if it's an older article on a website that hasn't been touched in maybe a while.
Yeah, it's been almost a year probably.
Okay. So
Hmm.
Well, not quite. Maybe, yeah, because when I rebranded, I updated a few things, but then I'm just like, I'm not messing with it because I'm working on my new one and I'm
But I mean, I have old posts that have been around for
right.
yeah.
forever, and I don't
Sometimes
touch
they'll post it really well, but I mean, that is a topic that does need to stay current, and it was written in 2017.
So can you share the
maybe
URL
not.
to your post in the chat so I can use my tool here that I want
Oops,
to use
okay.
to, because I want to investigate it in terms of backlinks.
Yeah, you can investigate it. Just do me a favor and don't read it.
Oh, come on.
I'm telling you, I wrote it in 2017. I haven't done much, but okay, I put it in there for you.
All right. So I'm going to share a screen again. And so we've talked a little bit about backlink tools. Pardon me. When Steffi was talking about SEMrush, the tool I like to use is called Majestic.
Mm.
Now I'm showing you this tool. I like it and I recommend it, but I've designed Curious Ants around the ability to use free tools. So
Yes.
this is more of a, hey, this will be really nice to have, but it's fairly expensive. And if you're only managing one site, I don't know if I could justify it, but I run all my clients through it and stuff like that. So I'm not going to crawl the page. I'm going to submit the page to Majestic. And what it's going to tell me is some things. So looking at this page, it's saying there is, again, not an indictment to Tricia. The link quality, the trust flow is 0. That's a 0 out of 100.
Mm-hmm.
That's all right. And the citation flow is 16 out of 100.
Mm-hmm.
So citation flow has to do with link volume, meaning if we just counted the number of links that eventually could end up at this page, it values to be 16. It doesn't mean there's 16 links. It just means the value is 16 citation flows, whatever a citation flow might be.
Mm-hmm.
The trust flow, meaning if we only looked at the credibility of websites linking to this page, right, that could eventually get to this page, it would be a 0.
Mhm.
So that's telling me nobody, so this page has a trust flow of 0, which suggests that it might be a function of the fact that no authority websites are linking to
Yeah.
this page in a roundabout sort of way, right? Because it's not necessarily have to link to this page, but it could link to your site, which would then flow, trust flow to your page. Because you can think of, we used to call it link juice,
Yeah.
but you can think of link juice flowing like water through pipes. And if a link passes link juice, that link juice then flows to all the pages that have received links from it. So for instance, if this post was orphaned, meaning there's no way to get to it except through the XML sitemap or knowing the URL, then there's no link juice that can flow to it. That's why it's important to have blog categories in a
Mhm.
blog archive page, so Google can crawl those pages and get to these blog posts. It could be, for instance, that this blog post happened so long ago that Google has to crawl so deep into your site that the link authority is so, it's a trickle
Mhm.
before it even has anything. And that's what this is suggesting.
Okay.
So now what we can do is we can go to, we can also look at the site as a whole. And so this is, but
Wait a minute, you looking at my old website? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. No,
this is the
yeah,
overall.
changed my, and so I don't know when you say citation, like, you're talking about links to it and not like, so for instance, I went in and changed all of what I talk about citations, like, the citation companies from Butts to my new business.
Right.
So I kind of have it's over time has transferred to my new
Sure.
domain.
Sure. So that would definitely affect the citations and the link authority, right?
Yeah.
So if we just talk about your site as a whole, Majestic's going to say your trust flow is 3 out of 100, and your citation flow is 24. Now, Majestic does a couple cool things. If we look at what they call the link profile, is that what they call this? Yeah. You can kind of see, if we look at it just in terms of domains, there are 72 referring domains to this site. Ideally, the best links follow this diagonal line because they're a happy mix between trust flow and citation flow. Anything below the line means there's a link, but it doesn't have a lot of trust. Anything above the line means,
Above it? Hey, it's not that bad.
well, all these that are on this line on the very bottom, that
They're bad. Yeah.
that's, I mean, it's not ideal.
Yes. Yes.
But these, you have some really good ones. Like there's this one, like right there on the line, pretty high up. These ones up here, these are pretty good, right? And if we do it just in, that's referring domains.
No,
If we look on backlinks, individual backlinks, you see most of yours are really low.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Right.
could some of those towards the line, when you say like referring domains, could that be like if I posted on social media and like Facebook, would that or no, that's not it?
Because those links don't count.
Okay.
Right. So we can't go into depth if we wanted to. We can look at the list of referring domains and the links and topics. I don't necessarily want to go into that depth.
Yeah.
But what this is suggesting to me is that maybe Google doesn't find your site as credible as it could or should. And that means it's saying to a blog post that was published many, many moons ago is so deep in your site, there's no link juice trickling to it, that, and there's not a lot of link juice to the site in the first place. That is why Google is not indexing it. And this is why link building is so very, very important, right? Because we can optimize the words all day long, but if no one else says that our site is credible, and they determine, and Google judges that based on other websites linking to us, then how does it know which is the best article about mobile websites and responsiveness? There's a bunch that talk about that. But if this one doesn't have any links or is on a website that doesn't have a lot of links, then Google's gonna say, well, of all the articles on there, this one has a pretty low link. Now, again, Google's not using this link metric, but this resembles a type of metric that Google might use, right? Google doesn't pull data from Majestic and evaluate websites, but Majestic is attempting to replicate what Google does when it considers links. And so it might be saying, Google might use their own metrics and say, hey, fine post, we see it, but we're not going to serve it or index it because it doesn't have the credibility that other articles might have on that.
Okay.
And so that's why link building is a very important part of this process.
Yeah. Okay. I was just trying to see, okay, yes, see how many, when you were talking about like how far deep it is or whatever, I was kind of looking and seeing, and I didn't think I had that many, but I do have quite a few posts before it.
Yep.
2018, 19. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
So this teaches us a couple things. Number one, we always have to be link building, right? Number two, old posts need internal links. Internal links is one of these overlooked activities in SEO. And honestly, I found a real hard time fitting it into the game plan. But if you read real closely in the blog, in the how to write blog posts article, it says, be sure to link to other relevant pieces of content on your site. One of the values of blogging continually is you'll be able to say, hey, mobile websites, you're not talking about mobile websites in a new blog post, but you mention mobile websites in a new blog post. So link back to an old article on mobile websites. Now that link just can flow from the most recent content to the old stuff.
Yeah, I think I need to remember, because I know I look through that, and I do see where I have inside of that linking to another site, but I don't know that I have anything from another blog post that came after it linking to it.
Right.
So I need to, I guess, remember to go both ways.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Categorization and tagging in blogs can help with this as well. Just be careful about going too crazy with that, or you're going to have a beast to manage. Also, I'd also say maybe this post needs to be updated. Like, what if this was just freshened content?
Yeah, it's probably something I may write about on my new site, but
well, yeah. So that was the next point I was going to bring in. All this content that you've previously written is really valuable and might be worth importing over to your new site.
So what not sure. Question about that. So like all of it, I won't want to do, but I might pick pieces here and there. Mm-hmm. If I decide to do that, I'll probably post it and freshen it up. So if I do that, but I leave my mutt butts there and have my Your Biz Watchdog, could I then go in and tell Google, okay, both of these are mine, but this is the new version? Can I do that?
That is something you can do with canonical tags.
That was what I was going to, yeah, that canonical was what I was thinking. Okay.
Right. So let's say you have an article on mutt butts and you're going to move to your new domain. Let's say you're really making only slightly small changes, maybe correcting a spelling error, adding a couple little details, but it's basically the same article. I would republish it on your new site. Go back to mutt butts, and within the Yoast plugin, you can actually manually set a canonical tag. And I would set it to the same blog post on the new site.
Okay.
So Google sees, I know they're the same or virtually the same. And I just give the new site credit for it. Alternatively, you could just simply kill it off the MuttButts site and set up a redirect from MuttButts to the new page.
I've got some, I think that would have,
That's a better solution.
that is, I think maybe I'll probably do that at some point. After I get my head wrapped around the new site, but there's so many, I'm afraid of, like, just different, so many.
Say
so
that
much
again. What was
stuff.
the second option though? What was that? You said first was the canonical and second
And
was
redirect, set up a redirect.
what? But that's only if you're still hosting that old domain, right?
Well, if you decide not to host the old domain, I would still set up redirects in some capacity. Like even if it's at a domain level at your registrar, because even though MuttButts does not have a lot of link authority, it has some,
Yeah, it's been there for a while.
right?
When you
And-
say redirect, okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so I would want to preserve as much as I possibly could to the new site, even if I didn't keep most of that content.
Okay.
Redirects are one of these things that really makes newly launched websites successful or not. And it really, sometimes, I mean, I've seen large companies say, oh, we have 1,000 blog posts, it's not worth our time to migrate them over. Oh, yes, it is.
Mhm.
It really is. And because you're getting long tail traffic from
Yeah.
those, there's links there. Even, it's just you do the redirects and it helps.
So when you say redirect, I may have misunderstood. Are you saying redirect like per blog post, like pick a blog post? Okay, see, I was thinking redirect the whole thing. Okay, so I can go in and say, okay, these 10 blog posts I really like, I'm going to publish them on my new site. So then where would I go into Yoast and put a full or not Yoast, or a redirect plugin?
Ideally, you'd use HD Access or something like that.
Or your
If you
host
don't-
will provide, like WP Engine provides redirects on the server level. That would be the easiest way.
That is the best way.
Because on that site is on WP Engine.
I would
Okay.
use WP Engine's tool in the user
Okay.
portal.
Yeah.
And then just like pick the ones that I want and where they want to go, where I want them to go.
Yep.
But so she'll have to, so you can't, like, if she doesn't host that old site anymore, all she can do at the registrar is point the domain. So she'll have to keep hosting the old domain.
I will.
So-
That was my intention.
But that's just something people don't understand. I think that in order to redirect on a page by page basis, you have to still have that hosted site, that site hosted, right?
Yeah. And in some cases, it's totally worth doing that. Like
Yeah.
if you had a really good site and it might be really worth it. Alternatively, a lot of registrars will allow you to redirect the domain and keep the old URL structure and just redirect the old URL structure to the new website. Now, if you do that and that URL structure is not existing on the new website, what do you get? You get 404 errors, right? Because let's say the URL is muttbutts.com/DavidIsAwesome, and you don't have a David is Awesome page on the new site. So you will see that in the 404 errors. So when you see that 404 errors, that's when you set up the redirect on your new server, because then it will catch the URL from the old site into your new one. And so then you just catch all those 404 errors and redirect all those as well. And then you keep all that link equity from the old site.
Yeah. Okay.
Sometimes it's more easy to keep an old host up.
Yeah, I am, and even though it is WP Engine, Steffi, there's a reason I got a sweet deal. So
Okay.
on that site, because otherwise, if I were paying monthly, I would probably reconsider if I were paying a big monthly fee. But even though it is WP Engine, which is really good, I don't have to worry about that.
So then eventually, David, you would suggest they eventually can delete that old domain, right?
Never.
Oh, never?
I would not. Now, the exception, so there's a diminishing returns. If all things were equal, I would absolutely keep it forever. If the domain was so low of a domain authority with no links or very minuscule links, and I really couldn't afford to keep buying that domain name, I would let it go.
Okay.
But
And-
I would keep, you want to keep redirects up indefinitely.
And what if what if you use the same URL structure for the blog posts, keeping them the same on both sites, and then you just pointed the domain name over? You're saying it will pick up that post with that domain name without having to set up redirects individually?
If that's how you set up the domain redirect at your registrar.
Okay, I have a question about that.
Well, let me, hold on, before we get there. Does that make sense, Steffi?
Mhm. So is that,
There's-
so how is that a permanent redirect?
It's a permanent redirect, which is a 301, which is
Yeah.
what we want to use. We always want to use 301s. 302 says temporary, means Google will cache the old URL and not pass authority. 301 passes authority. But we really want to make sure that, oh, I lost my train of thought. So there's two ways to do it. One is just, hey, everything that goes to oldwebsite.com goes to this one URL on newwebsite.com.
Yeah.
Or you can say, preserve the URL structure. Different registrars call it a little different. And that's the ideal way, because then you can just catch all those 404s and preserve all those URLs. I've worked really hard with web developers before to keep the exact same URLs, because
Mhm.
then we don't have to do redirects.
Mhm.
And that saves us a lot of time and keeps the site indexed, makes it gets in the index, the new URL index more quickly, keeps all the link. Oh my God, we work so hard to do that sometimes. And it's
Mhm.
so worth it, especially because we don't want to have to maintain, I've actually seen a redirect file with 100,000 redirects in it before.
Oh my God, yeah.
Whoa.
And that's just because they didn't do a good job managing their URLs.
Yeah.
Okay.
But that's a whole nother conversation. Okay.
So, for example, on my old one, you saw that was a blog, but it didn't have blog in the URL. So my
Yeah.
new site will.
Yeah.
So because I decided to have a couple, add that in there. I
Yeah.
think when I did the other without, I think there was one time when sometimes it was recommended not to. Anyway,
Yeah, right.
so I guess that what you were telling Steffi about wouldn't apply. Like I would have to do individual. It wouldn't be like all blog posts. It would have to be individual, which is fine. I'm not going to do all of them. I'm only going to, because some of them are so old that I don't want to, but I'll probably take some of the ones. I'll have the same ending, whatever you call it, but it'll have blog in there. Whereas on the old Mutt-Butts, it doesn't have blog.
Yeah, I'd encourage you to do as many as you could.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you think they don't have much, the net total of all of them really could amount to something substantial.
Okay. I guess though, so like like a lot of the images have like my Mutt-Butts, branding and everything on it. And, I could take those when I have time and send them to my assistant and say, he can even come up with new images if they're in, just, and have it do that. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I,
So I'll put
I,
that maybe on my to-do list if I don't have work for him immediate. So, okay.
yeah, I would even, if it were me, I would save all the blog posts, even if you didn't like them.
Oh, okay.
You can always go back and update them.
Yeah.
If they are completely unsalvageable, okay, then maybe kill them and redirect them. But sometimes your website, you'd be really surprised how much traffic you get for these really long and obscure and old articles.
Mhm.
Now, if you're not, that's a totally different thing. But the real secret to good SEO is the long tail, which is the idea that it's these really, really specific queries that come in that you can't predict, that send huge amount of traffic that you don't realize you're getting. And we don't want to lose that because there's all kinds of advantages to that. So we want to keep as much of that as possible. We can always update it, and we don't have to update it immediately. I know I've got some articles on some old sites that I really need to go update because they really are obsolete. But yeah, I'd keep them.
Okay, and then like Trish was saying, like she used blog as, I guess, the blog base or category base maybe or something. And so like you would recommend, like keeping that if, with the new site.
Yeah.
Yeah, we talked about this last time.
Not the old one.
Yeah, the old site, her old site doesn't have blog, her new one will in the URL.
Oh.
And we just talked real briefly last week, we talked about the value of using a word like blog in there. It's not that Google ranks the pages better because the words blogs in there. Google does not care. But there's all kinds of other advantages like, hey, how's the traffic to my blog looking? Hey, I'd like to set up a remarketing tag of people who visited my blog but not filled out my contact form. I mean, these are really good reasons to keep blog in the URL. It's not about SEO performance of your blog because the word blog's in your URL.
But don't you want to use like a keyword friendly term or something? Like I had written you earlier about the category base for the one website we're looking at.
Google, yes, keywords have some value in URLs, but it's very, very small. I think it's probably more important to have it in the final aspect of the URL, but it's also, we needed to also reconsider for humans. We don't want to have such a long URL that it makes it really hard and cumbersome to use. So there's this diminishing returns. Especially if we're reusing the same keyword in the URL. I haven't seen your email yet, but I'm not a huge got to put the keywords in the URL fan. Like, just make the URL useful and relevant and move on.
Like news or blog.
Yeah, it's one of my biggest, most successful clients as far as their blog goes is they don't have a blog. They have a news section, and every week we submit more news to more blog posts to the news section. Google clearly doesn't care. I mean, they're kicking butt. So like, and it doesn't even have the keyword in it, right? They're not a news site.
Yeah.
It just so happens that was the easiest way to start blogging. And it doesn't really matter whether it's news or blog or you should read this.
Yeah. What is that part of the URL called? That little blog or news?
Well, it's technically it's a directory.
Okay.
But it's not really a directory. When in old code days, you remember when you used MS-DOS and you type in directories and it would have slashes. This is just Unix for it. And so it's technical, but the way WordPress works, it mimics directories. Those directories don't really exist.
Okay.
So it's just kind of part of the URI.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have been writing for the past at least 6 months. I think it's been more than 6 months. Weekly emails, and I just I decided I just didn't want to take the time and put them on my old site. So I've got them, and I'm going to start when I have my new site, start with some of those that are actually just fresh and haven't been, published out other than an email. So I'm going to start with some of those. I figure to get some content on there.
Yeah, that's great. I have just started hiring people to transcribe these videos and put them on my site because we talk about really great stuff, and it's really hard for people to find the stuff in the video. But if it's text, Google, and I'm going to be consistently improving that process, organizing it better, having some editors go through and fix it up.
Yeah.
So it becomes another valuable piece.
It's an issue I've had with our billing rollout is that I'll email our rep and be like, hey, I'm not sure how to do this. And she's like, well, we went over it in the video training. And I'm like, okay, well, I watched like 6 hours of video training. And like, what am I supposed to do? Just like go through them all again when you could just answer me in 3 minutes? Like,
Yes, you
because
should go
also
through all
video
6 hours of training
they
again.
don't have any kind of corresponding
Yeah.
PowerPoint or PDF or
Yeah.
anything that goes with them. It's just that training. And like, unless you remember, well, at the 45th minute of this 90-minute training, she talked about that. Like, obviously I don't remember that because then I wouldn't be asking you how to do it. So that was a little bit of a hot button for me the last 2
Well,
weeks.
let's all say hi to the transcriber. Hi,
Yes.
transcriber. Thank you.
Yes. Yeah.
Any other questions we want to address today? We said we had no questions and we took a full hour.
Yeah.
I do have one that's
Yeah.
Twitter related. Oh, sorry, you guys.
No, I was going to say, I think I have a question, but I'll submit it for next week because I don't think it's going to be like an 8-minute question. So,
Okay.
So the so when you say fix a page to be more keyword friendly for a client, and what is the best steps to take in the Google Search Console to make sure that they don't lose the ranking? So of course I know to set up a redirect, but then should we then like submit that URL through Google Search Console, and it still lists the old URL? So do we then choose to delete that old URL? Like, what steps would you recommend happen?
I missed the beginning of this question. What is the circumstances that we're starting with?
If you wanted to optimize the pages on a website to use keywords in them, say they had just about,
Yeah.
and it could be about a pet walker or something, dog walker, instead of just about.
Okay.
What's the best steps you would recommend taking to keep that URL ranking and stuff? I know to do a redirect. I get that. But in
Oh,
Google
so you're
Search
changing
Console-
the URL?
What?
Are you creating a new about dog walking page?
Yeah, no, we're changing an existing page to use more keywords in the URL. And I don't want to lose the ranking of that page.
Okay.
URL is changing.
The URL will change. That's what I want to do.
So
is
the first
change
question,
the
are you
correct
sure you
way.
want to change the URL? Because even if you redirect, Google is going to unindex the old page and then figure out whether it wants to serve so you're going to drop in traffic while Google figures out what to do with the page. Hopefully the page bounces back higher than before, but because you lose a little authority through the redirect, it might be better to improve the page and keep the same URL. Because like I said, having the keyword in the URL is such a small ranking factor that might not overcome the what's lost and regained in the redirect.
But then when you do a new site, it's like you should probably, right? And then set up redirects. Well,
but like I said, I'm not a big fan of keywords in URLs, especially I would never change a URL just to put the keyword in it, because you do lose some authority with that redirect. Now, theoretically, it will perform better, but I don't think the weight factor of the keyword in the URL overcompensates for what you lose in the redirect, in my experience. So I'd almost just optimize the existing page better, keep the URL, which will not only help it it doesn't have to re-index the page. So really, you start to see results faster because it's not dipping and then recovering. It is just growing. And so you'll get results faster. Normally I don't optimize about pages because
it's just an example.
Yeah. So if we're doing a blue widget page, a red widget page, and a green whatchamacallit page, and I definitely would not change the URLs if we had a blue, red, and green page to blue widget, red widget, green whatchamacallit. But I would update that content and optimize the content and just make sure those pages are more relevant for that topic
Mm.
without changing the URL.
Mm.
And I think what you'd see is you'd see results faster.
Okay,
in
what if you
adding-
had to, like, what if, say, for example, well, if their service changed or something, but I guess you would just create a new page and get rid of the other one and.
Well, yeah, you could do that. And I am such a fan of this idea that I have even kept not exactly correct URLs and optimized this page for something like I have a client that has courses. They offer courses as in a school, and the name of the certification changed.
Mhm.
I suggested they keep the old certification name in the URL and just optimize the page for the new certification because there was some overlap.
Mhm.
And I just thought that the value of not having to go through the redirect would outweigh anything they'd gain from the decrease and jump. Now, you could convince me in that case I might have done the wrong thing, and maybe I should have just done a URL that was simpler and didn't have the old course name in it. But in that case, I just said, let's just keep the same URL. Let's just keep it and just re-optimize the page for the new course. And because there were a lot of similarities, is like this, ABCD certification, and this is ABCD browser certification, and the certification body removed the word browser, but we kept the browser in the URL, something like that. And so even to that effect, I didn't even bother to change the URL.
Mm.
And it did well because the page was optimized. Other things on the page have more weight than the URL. So changing the title of the page, changing the headline of the page, changing the content on the page. Clearly that page was relevant to the new course.
Mhm.
And Google served it for people, the new course. And frankly, there are less people searching on the old course because it was obsolete. And so it ended up being a win for them.
And how would you rank a page based on, that Majestic website, using that to figure out if it had good page rank or whatever?
That's one factor, but I would first focus on the on-page factors like, is it relevant? We've done our keyword research. We know how people are talking about what we have. We're talking about how people describe it. So we're including that. We're talking about headlines, including headlines, sub-headlines. Title tag is such a very important piece of this.
Okay.
Go through all those basics and then worry about links after you do the basics of the content.
Right. Okay.
So there is a page in the game plan on how to optimize. I think I say how to optimize a landing page, which is what I call a service page, as opposed to how to optimize a blog post. So you can look in the directions and it'll say, here's how I go about this process of optimizing a page, assuming I've done keyword research and know the various phrases someone could be searching for to find that service or product.
Okay.
Cool.
Yep. Great. Thank you.
Okay. Well, it's 3:00. I got to roll.
Thank you.
Thank you. As always, looking forward to seeing you at the study group on Monday.
Yes. Yeah.
That'll be fun. And I hope you all have a good week.
Great.
Okay,
Thank
you
you.
too.
Okay.
Bye.
Talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye.